Welcome to gaLtalk, a new show for women with an emphasis on discussing the cares and concerns of life from the perspective of women of color. gaLtalk is not just talk. GAL is an acronym for Get a Life. That's life with a capital L, as in life in Jesus. We're not just here to talk, but to share with you wisdom you can trust. Now, what we will say will sound like it's countercultural at times, because it is. God's wisdom is often opposite of what we want to do. It's the hard thing to do a lot of times, but it's the thing that will bring us peace and contentment that other advice will not give us. Join us on this countercultural journey. Welcome to gaLtalk, where we talk about everything from body image and sex and love and contentment, fear and politics, with Jesus all in the middle. My name is Irrayna, and I'm here with my friends Kristen and Maresa. You met Kristen last time. Maresa is new, so we're going to let her introduce herself. Last time we talked about a little about who we were, Maresa. So just give us a quick introduction of Maresa Young.
So my name is Maresa Young. I am a wife and a mother, and a Christian mainly. And so it's just been a great opportunity to spend time and sharing some of the things that I've learned over the years with a lot of the young women, to hopefully not make the same mistakes that I have made.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's a big reason why I'm here. And I know Kristen had mentioned that too also last week. So I'm going to start y'all off with this question. This month we're talking about freedom on Gal Online. And so our talk goes along with our theme. And so that's our question. Now, today, as we go through freedom, I just wanted to bring up some things that I saw, something I saw in the news. And it was that Arkansas had actually passed a bill. And it was prohibiting abortion, except for when the mother's life was in danger. I don't want to talk about abortion. We have the issue of the vax, no vax thing going on. And I want to talk about vaccination. What I want to talk about is, though, what does autonomy and freedom look like when we're talking about our bodies, right? With these things going on in the backdrop of our culture, what does freedom look like? Or, what lines do you think our freedom allow us? Kristen, I'll start with you.
That's a tough one. Because it's So I would say, I guess my answer is twofold. Because the way I look at it, so from a Christian standpoint, these bodies that we inhabit are loners. And they were given to us by God. We were bought at a price that Jesus paid when he died on the cross for us. So even the Bible tells us to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice to him, because we aren't our own. And so I think going along with that, though, we also have to realize that to whom much is given, much is required. And so even though we do have these bodies on loan, from the Lord, we have to maintain them. So we have to take care of them. We have to do right by them. And in turn, when we do that, we also honor God the same way. So, there are a lot of decisions that people are making. Simply the ones that you named are the two hottest right now. I definitely say that. So I think just in thinking about those in particular, we're required to do a lot. We're required to maintain a certain level of modesty, like we talked about last time. We're required to take care of this simple. So there just comes a point when, we have to take ownership of our bodies and make sure we're making the right decisions, not only for us, but also for those around us as well.
So, but you bring up a point about not just for us, but for those around us. And like I said, I don't want to talk about any specific issue, but people feel like their bodies, when it comes to their bodies, it's theirs. And so other people shouldn't have the ability to tell them what to do. And so I'll just say this. Like, if we're talking about
with that though.
Hmm?
I said I wholeheartedly agree with that message. That I do not think, for example, I don't think that it is right for legislation to like legislate a woman's body. I don't think that's correct at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I bring it to the Christian side of it, because I think a lot of laws are based in like a false sense of Christianity. But I think if we actually looked at the Christian nature of it, we are held to a higher standard because of what Christ did for us, because of our relationship with him. So that for me is what should govern our our decisions, because they're heart decisions at the end of the day. So I think that that's what should govern us, as opposed to it always having to come down to legislation. If that makes sense.
No, I agree with you in terms of there are things that could be quote unquote legal that still would not be morally correct, right?
Right.
We don't put people who commit adultery in jail, but it's not morally correct. So in that sense, I do understand what you said. So Maresa, let me go to you and ask you what your sense of freedom is, given the same background and backdrop in our culture.
So I'd almost add more to what Kristen was saying. It's you're right. You can't easily, if we could legislate a lot of different things, then we could easily legislate what it is that we want people to believe and do. And one of the things that God has done is given us a right for a free will, and we can make the decisions of whether or not the things that we do. And the issue is not to force people to do different things, but to change their heart, as Kristen kind of alluded to, and to change. And that's kind of that's really what we are here to do, is to give people another option, another choice. And this choice that we're giving them is based on the truth of Jesus Christ. And based on those truths, that we can reach people and let them understand who Jesus is, will help change their heart to do then the things and make decisions that are in line with what Jesus says, versus making decisions that are in line with what the culture says.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my question to both of you then is this, because you're making a distinction between Christians and non-Christians. So the question is a non-Christian then free in a way to do whatever they want with their bodies, for instance, that perhaps a non-Christian is? I'm not saying that Christians aren't making decisions on a different level, but when it comes to responsibility across the board, when God looks at us all with what he's given us, Christian and non-Christian, does that mean the non-Christian is going to get away with this lack of responsibility, quote unquote? And that doesn't mean that they're all, everybody who doesn't know Christ is irresponsible. I don't mean in that sense, but I'm working with this distinction you made between Christians and non-Christians.
So I'll answer. It's not a matter of Christian and non-Christian, because we all still have the ability to make the decisions. Depending on where you are in your Christian walk, you may not be making decisions that are totally in line with what Christ says at that point in time, maybe because you haven't totally believed it at that point, or maybe you haven't even read it or been introduced to that to truly understand what the Bible says. So to me, it's not a matter of Christian versus non-Christian. It's a matter of where you are and what you are doing in your walk with Christ, in terms of making sure that you are following what he says and what his will is, and then that would dictate what you are doing with your body.
But what if I don't know Christ? That's what I'm saying. If I don't know Christ, so you're saying whatever I'm doing with my body it's okay. It's, you know, off the chart because I don't have that responsibility. You understand what I'm saying? Because the thing is, we can't legislate everything, there are some things we do legislate morally because it affects other people, right? So when you're talking about murder, for instance, a very easy one, we're going to legislate that because you're affecting other people with your freedom. You can't just get mad, decide you're going to pickaxe somebody to death because you know you want to. And that's for Christian or non-Christian. I mean, there's some things we have to determine. You're not free to do that. And so, you know, when you talk about issues, and like I said, I'm not going to talk about, I don't want to get into the depths of like an abortion issue. The issue has to do with who else is being affected besides the person with the legs walking around with the body, right? I mean, that's the issue. So that's why I'm asking the question in terms of autonomy. What is it that we actually get to control? And it's not a matter, I guess my question is, I'm asking a general sense of freedom. I mean, and if your answer is really always in the end that, you know, some things are determined morally, and then that's your answer. But I just wanted to frame it so that you understood maybe perhaps fully what I was talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to, you know, so my answer to what you're saying would kind of go along, kind of going along the same lines. I think it's more of a heart issue. So kind of piggybacking off of what Maresa said, it's where you are. Our hearts as Christians are supposed to belong to Christ, but others who are non-believers might still be morally sound. You know, their foundation might not be based in scripture, but they still have a moral compass that does not allow them to do, it doesn't allow them to do certain things for whatever, you know, for whatever the reason may be. You know, we might not get drunk because the Bible tells us not to, but somebody else might get drunk because they're one of their parents was an alcoholic and they saw what it did. So, you know, it's the same result. The two people still aren't, you know, they still aren't getting drunk, but their reasoning is different. So I think, you know, in this whole just the climate that we're living in, I think that's where we are, because we see people who are believers and non-believers coming together, fighting the same good fight, fighting the same good cause. Mm-hmm. It's just that our foundation is rooted in Christ, and theirs, you know, and theirs is not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything you wanted to add, Maresa, to that before I go on to your next question?
No, I mean, like I agree with what Kristen is saying. You know, it's also hard to hold people accountable for things that they, you know, we as humans can't hold people accountable for things that they don't know the truth of. You know, Jesus can do it because he's doing it with, you know, a different eye than we're doing it. But, you know, because, you know, he's coming from a love, perfection, you know, truth, and he knows what you know. We don't know what you know. So it's hard to, but that, you know, just because you don't know it, you know, doesn't mean that it, you know, therefore it makes it right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm going to say this one thing, and then I'm going to go on to the next point. Yeah, I often have this conversation with my husband because, you know, as I read through the Bible, I noticed that, and I say this because we're such an individualistic type society here in America, but I notice a lot in the Bible when God talks about judgment, he judges people groups, and he holds people responsible for what goes on in their communities. And I know it's easy for us to say, oh, that person over there is doing it. But what happens is when God judges and when things come back on a community or a society because of what is going on, everybody's affected, you know? Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, I don't think it's all individual. And I think in some sense, we do have that responsibility to the greater good of our communities to actually participate and actually, you know, like, as much as possible, stick to and lead people to God's laws, you know, to his commandments. But So my question is this. So, I don't know, did either one of you see Braveheart? It's an older movie with, and it's a story of William Wallace. It was in Ireland or whatever. And so there's this scene he says freedom, like he's, like screaming freedom and all this other stuff, but he dies for this cause. But we've seen this even in, here in America because of injustice and cries of freedom and things that people are willing to die for. So my question to you is what causes bring out the William Wallace in you, that cry for it's unjust and I'm willing to die for this?
So I'd say one hill that I have recently been willing to die on is the social media culture that we live in, that everything needs a mainstream stamp of approval for it to be relevant. And I really, really, really struggle with that. And I've even, commented on a couple Facebook posts, honestly, about it. Just this idea that in order for us to matter, we need mainstream's approval. And that's just been on my heart, because if we only valued ourselves as much as we want other people to value us, we would be so much stronger, so much more powerful, so engaged with one another. Like, I think if we just took a step back and stopped needing other people's cosigns, that we would be the amazing people that we are. Like, we would truly be able to manifest and harness the things that make us beautiful and make us special. But until we get there, we're still going to be struggling. And it just breaks my heart when I see that going on in society.
Yeah, because I'll go ahead, Maresa. Go ahead.
That's an interesting comment. I guess first thing when I think of that comes to my mind of dying for would be, people harming kids or the things that are going on with kids. But I think that when you just were talking, Kristen, so many other things came to my mind, and I'm sorry, my phone is going. But came to my mind because I've seen how looking for the approval of people has changed people's lives, and changed what they've done and changed, or affected, I should say, what they do and the things that they are concerning themselves with. If you're instead of just living their lives the way that, God has intended them to live. And if you're concerned about, your appearance, then you're not walking out, you may not walk out the house if your hair is not perfect, or go visit a friend or something if you don't have on the right clothes, or, something like that. But yet you miss the point of, the visiting with the friend, or the going out, the true connection point, because you're worried about something that's superficial to that point, or you're spinning your wheels just trying to please people, but yet those people you please people for a short period, but in the long run they mean nothing to you. They're doing nothing to help you grow or get better. They're just trying to they're just building you up for this 1 second. And and it just I fully agree, like when you said it, is just how much that affects, I guess the more you think, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm seeing how much that truly has an effect on so many people, probably all of us to some extent, but I've seen it a lot of people to a much larger effect. And it is truly very impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And what I was going to say is I've noticed a lot of posts about people who were like the TikTok star committed suicide. I've seen a lot of those come through. And, my thought is, what's going on? And I do think that the reason why we're here is because we recognize that we want to give that biblical perspective to help people or snatch people, young ladies, out of that culture, right? Out of that mindset to help. So let me shift a little bit. Let's talk sacrifice. So, okay, this is kind of weird, I know, but a lot of times when I think about this sacrifice and freedom thing, Lady and the Tramp comes to my mind, right? And so I'm gonna tell you why. So Tramp is a little dog, right? The little male dog, and he has a little freedom and he just runs around the street and he has to steal his meal. But Lady is kept, she has a family. When it's cold outside, she's warm, and she doesn't have to worry about where she's gonna sleep that night, and she has her loving family. And but she can't run around and trace around the street like Tramp does, right? And I always, when I think about the sacrifices of freedom versus, being and being willing to be within a boundary, I think about, is it better to have your freedom and not know where your next meal is coming from, or perhaps, have that comfort of a loving family and have that boundary set? And I know I'm thinking Lady and the Tramp, but we can say this for just like relationships in general. I mean, when we decide to be in a relationship with like our husbands, okay, forget us. They can't go anywhere with everybody, right? Neither can we, but you know what I'm saying? And so there is that sacrifice that happens. And so tell me what that looks like in your relationship with God. Maresa, let's start with you.
In terms of what you're saying, what types of things do I set boundaries around, or
how does your relationship set boundaries? So I could say, for instance, I know when I came to the Lord, and he rearranged things in my life. I look back and I have sacrificed friendships because I wasn't doing stuff that my friends were doing anymore. So those were things. Now I can't sit there and say I planned it that way, but I noticed it, that those were some things that went by the wayside, but I got that relationship with God. And so that's what I mean, just to give you an idea of the concept of what I'm saying, things that you've noticed in your relationship with the Lord. Because, people will say, oh, I want to be free, I want to do whatever. But, things do change in that relationship with the Lord.
So, I mean, I think that holds true with a lot of things. If you choose to lose weight, you give up the ability, or you give up eating whatever you want to, because you know that you have to eat certain things, or you change from what you're eating from, maybe more from eating fast foods or eating greasy foods or whatever, to eating foods that are more healthy, because you do it for the outcome. You know that there is, that by doing it, that you reach the goal that you are trying to achieve. So there's a lot of things that we do change and change our boundaries on, to reach the goals that we are trying to reach. So as a Christian, if I'm trying to reach the goal of being more like Jesus and following in his footsteps, then I am going to change some of the things that I do and set boundaries on the things that I do, because I don't want to do things that are not pleasing to God. And by doing those things, you're right that there's a lot of things that, there are things that you end up sacrificing, because you end up sacrificing some of the people you hang around. You sacrifice some of the places that you go. You sacrifice some of the things that you do, but you do it not because, and not, and is, you don't use it as a sacrifice as a negative word, because you've chosen to do it for the outcome that you desire. So if you desire that outcome, then it's in a positive direction. Again, it's even something simple as, if you desire to have money in the bank, then you're not going to go and spend money whenever, go on mega shopping sprees. You'll budget, you'll set money aside for the goal of when there's an emergency or when you want to go on vacation, you have the money and the money available to do it. So, I don't see sacrifice, a lot of times sacrifice is just seen in a negative, but sacrifice to me is a positive. in this case, especially because it's allowing you to get where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Kristen?
Yeah, definitely. I tried to live from a can lifestyle and not a can't lifestyle. So I think a lot of people, even, their hesitation about coming to Christ is this misconception that you have to like stick to so many rules and there's so much that you can't do. But in reality, there's so much that you can do. You when you come to Christ, because we don't argue about the guardrails on the highway. We don't argue about the statue or the like the sides of the interstate. We don't argue about those because we know that they're there to keep us safe. And I always think about just in terms of like work, from 8 to 4:30, I'm an employee. I have to do XYZ while I'm at work. However, from the hours of 4:30 to 8 o'clock the next morning, that's when I get to be Kristen. That's when I get to be, Mariah's mama, Donald's wife, all those things that I am when I'm not at work. That's what I get to be when I'm away from work. So as long as I can just stay in, do what I have to do while I'm in a certain space, I can do the things that I want to do once I leave there. So that's the mindset that I have, with this. And like Sister Maresa said, I get to do this. I get to be a Jesus girl. Like I get to live my life in a way that is pleasing to him. I still get to have fun. I get to go out with my friends. I get to hang out. I get to spend time with my family. I get to go to the movies. I get to tithe. I get to dedicate my 10% to the kingdom. So I think if we just like changed our thinking about it and think about and acknowledge all of the things that we get to do, like I get to cast my cares on somebody and not worry about it. Like I get to submit my requests to God and allow his peace to come over me. So I try to live
eternity with God, right?
Yeah, like if we thought about it from that perspective, the little things that we are giving up that are probably detrimental to us anyway, like if we looked at it from that perspective, I think we would have, a lot more people that understood what it really meant to have a relationship with God. Like it's not about all these rules and things that you can't do because you're still saved anyway. But we as Christians have to rewrite this narrative because unfortunately a lot of people are lost and a lot of people are hurt and a lot of people just don't know the magnificent God that we serve. Then they don't know the Christ that we know because they're still stuck in this mindset of, oh, well, I can't do this. It's like, no, you get to do a whole lot more than you can even, like imagine. But yeah, we just gotta help people get there.
Yeah. When as you were talking, the scenario that came up to me was Adam and Eve in the garden. And so you have everything in the garden you can do except one thing. And that's the one thing that they concentrated on, as opposed to, like you said, enjoying everything else, And we do that sometimes. Like, okay, last question, ladies. Last round question. When you first experienced living away from home, what freedom do you remember taking advantage of?
Well, for me, the things that I mean, it's been a minute, but the things that come to my mind is, I get to choose whatever I wanted to eat. I got to, go and spend time with my friends at whatever time that I wanted. I didn't have to, be back in my room at a certain time. I had the freedom of making choices and making decisions, even though I still had to consider what the consequence of those decisions were. If I stayed up all night, then I wouldn't be able to do well in classes the next day.
Now, Maresa, let me ask you this question though. Is that something that you actually thought through, or is that something you had to learn?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. Well, yes and no. I didn't think it all the way through at the beginning. Thankfully, God put me in a dorm that had other people who were studying the same major that I had, and so it wasn't that everybody was out partying and we were the only ones doing homework. Everybody was sitting around doing whatever, but we still have the opportunity to do whatever do a lot more things, and make your own choices and decisions, and then and live with the consequences of those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about you, Kristen?
So my upbringing was pretty relaxed. So I never had a curfew or like anything like that while I was in high school. So just mainly with school, the freedom that I enjoyed was not having to wake up at the crack of dawn to go to basketball practice. Yeah, being able to schedule my own classes, like starting at noon if I felt like it, because I didn't want to wake up and have to go to class at 7:30 unless I really, really had to. So yeah, just the freedom of being able to choose my schedule was the best thing for me. That's what I was happy about, because it wasn't strict, it wasn't set, it wasn't it wasn't rigid. I had a whole lot of flexibility, so that worked for me.
Good. And all honesty, for me, I don't think that me and my roommate cleaned up our room for the first semester of college at all. The thing, we already knew each other. We were both, like we had gone to high school together. And I think it was just our freedom was like, oh, we don't have to do anything. And we didn't do it. I mean, we did schoolwork, So anyway, but I want to thank you ladies so much for sharing. I appreciate your thoughts. And I know that our audience, our galaxy, will be blessed by your words of wisdom. Okay, Galaxy, until next time, this has been gaLtalk.